Hi everyone, welcome to Camilla Cava Food Photography Podcast, a place where I interview talents in the food photography industry to learn ins and outs and help you and myself grow a food photography career. On today's episode, I talk with multidisciplinary artist Claire Luxton. Claire has achieved great artistic and commercial success through her series of evocative multimedia digital images. Her vivid surrealism and beautiful self-portraiture, as well as her distinctive editive style, have earned her recognition and acclaim as both a fine artist and a photographer. Claire has collaborated with brands such as Adobe and McQueens, and her art has been commissioned by clients such as JP Morgan, the Birmingham Royal Ballet, and Westminster Council. Most recently, her art is being showcased in a peace exhibition for the United Nations in New York. Together, we discuss the topics such as how to make a living and build a prolific career as an artist, what it means working with the galleries, how to price your own work, printing methods, and many, many more topics. Hi, Claire. Welcome to the podcast.
Hi, thank you for having me.
Yeah, that's so much fun. So, for the listeners that might not know you, could you introduce yourself? What do you do? Who you are? Where you're based?
So, my name is Claire Luxton and I'm a multidisciplinary artist. I'm based in East Sussex, which is in the countryside in England, and I'm roughly between London and Brighton for landmarks that people might know.
Yeah, it's helpful. Nice, perfect. And in terms of the arts, you mentioned that you're multidisciplinary artist. I'm so sorry, it's a difficult word for
Oh, I
me.
mean, I mean, who can barely get it out in English? You know, it's just it's so it's a long word. I never my spelling is terrible, and anytime I have to write it, I'm like, is that written correctly? I'm not sure.
Oh my gosh, right. Okay, so in terms of that, so what do you exactly do in terms of the art?
So my practice has kind of evolved quite a lot over the
Mhm.
years. So when I first started out, my practice was heavily based in sculpture and painting. And when I was at Goldsmiths, which is where I studied, they were my two main disciplines. I used a lot of resin and a lot of steel, and over the time my work evolved with photography, and photography was always a medium that I had, which I kind of used very experimentally. It was a way of sketching and coming up with different ideas. And over the years I started to find more of an interesting conversation with my photography.
Mhm.
um, instead of then working on something else as an end result, I wanted to explore what that conversation was. So I got to a point where I was predominantly working on photography. However, then over the years things tend to come full circle, and I love using my hands, I love making things. So it's kind of depending on the project, depending on what I'm trying to explore, will kind of dictate my medium. So whilst on social media people will see a lot of my photography,
Yeah.
I'm also working on other things as well. And also when I'm working on my photography, the way I construct those is very sculptural as well. So
Mhm.
I, I can't necessarily say I use one specific medium, and that's
Yeah.
why it's easier to say multidisciplinary, because that's really
Right.
the heart of my practice.
Uh-huh. Right, because most what we see indeed on your Instagram is basically photography and involving a lot self-portraiture, if I'm
Yes.
correct, right? Yeah. So how long have you been photographing actually?
So I got my first camera when I was 15. So
Ah,
I've been interested in photography for like 14 years now, give away
right.
my age. And but I mean, professionally for 5 years,
Okay.
really.
Uh-huh.
And it's just interesting how the medium for me has like grown and evolved. It's become an extension of my body and my practice. And I started using myself in my photography for a number of different reasons, but primarily when I was working on sculpture and painting, I was fascinated with the way our bodies occupy space and how they interact with the surroundings and materials. So when I was working on a sculpture or a super large painting, a lot of that interaction that was happening was between the materials, the space we were occupying, how I worked with the materials, and it was very physical. Whereas when I started initially looking at photography, that kind of interaction I felt was lost. So to kind of get that conversation going again, I started to use myself physically within the photos so I could continue that narrative, and that's how the self-portraiture began.
Very interesting. Yeah, because well, self-portraiture, like your work on Instagram and your work on TikTok, what I see, it's so gorgeous.
Oh, thank you. Oh, I
It's so
mean,
nice.
TikTok is like my new little like discovery, and I'm like, oh, and it's so interesting because so many people know my work from Pinterest, but have no idea who like whose work it is, because
Yeah,
things get shared on Pinterest with no credit or
right.
sourcing, and then people are finding me now on TikTok being
Yeah.
like, you're the girl from Pinterest. And it's like,
Really?
well, no, it's just I'm not, but I am, I guess, because
Uh-huh.
I have no idea how people are discovering
Wow.
my work. So
Yeah.
it's nice to be able to, it's so interesting how the different platforms are so different
Yeah.
in the way people interact, even though it's the same thing. So I'm kind of learning to navigate how I'm able to best, vocalize and share my work on
Yeah.
TikTok, but it's
Yeah.
quite exciting.
It's very exciting. It's such a new platform. Like I found you through TikTok, to be honest.
Oh, that's so cool. You
Yeah.
see,
Yeah, I found you through TikTok.
it's
Yeah.
crazy how after, I've been growing my Instagram for like 4.5
Yeah.
5 years now,
Yeah.
say, and it's so much harder to kind of grow on there.
Yeah.
Not that that's really, I mean, growth is nice, and I like it when it's organic.
Yeah.
It's not my pure goal really. My goal is to be able to share my work, but obviously it's then nice if new people are able to see that,
Yeah.
which is what I feel
Definitely.
can happen on TikTok. I feel that actually, your work is being shared with people who are interested in
Yeah.
whatever your demographic happens to be. So
Yeah.
I think that's really cool.
Yeah. It's incredibly targeted on TikTok and the reach is very, very big. Like I think more
Yeah.
people saw my work on TikTok than on Instagram for sure,
Yeah.
which is I think incredible. Yeah.
Yeah. So interesting.
Very good platform. Okay, so talking about business perspective, indeed, the one of the questions that I want to dive into is like people are aware that in terms at least photography that you can make let's say living out of the commercial work,
Yes.
but there's this common misconception like how do you make living out of art? I mean,
Mm.
you know what I mean? So I'm
Yeah.
very curious, what is your way of making your living through art?
So it's quite interesting because my journey is almost backwards. So I first started making a living through art,
Yeah,
through my photography as art. So
yeah.
um, I, from university, I worked with a number of different galleries,
Mhm.
and I started to sell my work internationally that way through galleries and collectors seeing my work, purchasing my photography.
Yeah.
And then over the years, as that has become more well known, I've then, off the back of my photography, then got commercial work.
Uh-huh.
So it's kind of, it's, for me it happened in the other way around. So I kind of
So
had a
interesting.
strong foundation in the art sector first, before. So for me it's always been about exploring my practice and my fine art, and if I'm able to use my art in a commercial way and
Yeah.
collaborate with brands, and I find that super satisfying. I love working on big projects, it's really exciting, but my practice has first and foremost always been rooted in the fine art sector. So
Mhm.
it's, I I would encourage all photographers to know that, you know, they have a value, like what they're offering is of value, and it depends on what works for you in terms of how you, like, you know, what you want your career to be, how you want to explore it, because they're not mutually exclusive, but at the same time you don't have to do both. Like, you don't
Yeah.
have to be, if you're a fine artist, fine art photographer, you don't have to do commercial work. Equally, if you're a commercial photographer, it doesn't mean you have to sell your work as, you know, art. So but also to know that you can do both. I think that's important.
That is very interesting, because for me, the art world is something completely new, and I think I started discovering that a little bit more when when I saw you on TikTok, when I
Yeah,
learned about you and your work, and that photographer can be an artist.
absolutely.
So for me, that's completely new world, and I'm just wondering, what are the ways to indeed, enter that world? How do you become a
Yeah,
fine artist?
yeah.
I
I
don't
mean,
know.
I would say that there's a number of kind of like entryways which are accessible. I mean, no guarantee of anything. I mean, the art world is a very complex beast, and it's evolving a lot at the moment. I would say entering competitions is
Oh,
a
yeah.
great way. So there's so many fine art photography competitions every year, international. There'll be like a small fee for most of them to enter.
Mhm.
Um, and that can be a really great way for the right people to start seeing your portfolio, to
Right.
start seeing what you're creating. Another way is to reach out to galleries that you feel are a good fit for your work. Again, a lot of any type of business is putting yourself out there. You know, you have to take that first step, because often people aren't going to come to you, and it's
Yeah.
only later that people might start approaching you to, you know, do things. the
Yeah.
other the other way is to wait for you know, a gallery to approach you, but that, again, that might take time.
Yeah.
So I think it's, you know, also speaking to your peers, so networking with, you know, with the right people, having conversations, being open, sharing your work, you know, constantly being open to interpretation, and just kind of really building that community around you that has you know, a similar kind of
Yeah.
just interest. I mean, you don't want to be in an echo chamber, but you want to kind of surround yourself with, you know, people who have similar goals or ambitions, or
Yeah.
are interested in you know, interested in art, for
Yeah.
example. So I think there are lots of different ways to enter into the fine art world, but also, you know, you don't need a piece of paper or anything else to say that you are a valid artist,
Uh-huh.
you know. So I think that you if you're true to your own practice, I think that's a lot of it as
Yeah.
well, and staying on that course.
Right. That makes sense. So you say like the probably like art galleries
Yes.
are a very important step to basically put yourself out there.
I mean, I have seen artists do well without working with galleries, and I'm not. I mean, so I had a period of time where it was around 2 or 3 years where I
Mhm.
was solidly working with galleries. And I then decided that that wasn't for me anymore, because
Mhm.
there's lots of ups and downs with galleries. Some galleries are absolutely amazing, some galleries aren't amazing, like with most things in life.
Yeah.
But so I've seen, so I then had a couple of years where I did everything myself, and it still worked for me. But there's obviously then, whilst you don't have any commission to pay, because
Mhm.
if you work with a gallery basic commission is generally 50%.
Uh-huh.
So um,
Oh, we take a big commission, so
yeah,
mhm.
that's kind of like a general baseline. You'll get some galleries where they might take less, but on the whole, it will be around the 50% mark, and that's quite common.
Okay.
So whilst there's swings and roundabouts, but I would say, don't ever really go exclusive with just one gallery, because it really like closes off your options.
That makes sense.
So I think it's interesting. You have to navigate the space and find good people. So it's completely possible to do it successfully without galleries, but working with galleries can be a really nourishing and valuable part of an artist's career, because there are some fantastic galleries out there who work with some really amazing artists, really wonderful fine art programs, and can really springboard who is seeing your work.
Yeah.
I think the visibility is just super important, and having open dialogues about what you're working on, and having a strong voice. It doesn't have to be the loudest voice, but as I said before, staying true to your voice and what you're expressing as an artist. So don't feel you have to go down the gallery route, but it can be like a really rewarding experience.
Okay, now I'm probably gonna sound like a noob, but how does it exactly work working with a gallery? So basically, you come with certain collection, let's say, or portfolio of your images, and they basically have it at the gallery already printed, and then they sell your work. And then can you bring the same ones to different galleries, but then it's not anymore exclusive?
Yeah, so I mean, it's completely, every single time you work with a gallery, it will be a completely different setup. So you might work with a gallery for a specific, as you say, a specific collection. And whilst you're exhibiting that specific collection, they might request that you are exhibiting that exclusively with them. So you could say you have a different collection of work. You could be exhibiting that other collection with another gallery at the same time, but not the same collection, so that they have exclusivity. Some galleries don't insist on that. Some galleries, you'll say you have an artwork which is an edition of 20. Some galleries are happy to take 10, and another gallery will take another 10. But it's all about being honest, because you don't want to tell one gallery that you are exclusive with them, and then do that to another gallery, and then because people will find out, and that's not good for anybody's reputation. So and yes, you will pay for the if it's a physical artwork, it will be up to you to produce and
to
deliver
print it.
deliver that artwork, and and I mean, negotiate what you're comfortable with. But yeah, I mean, every single gallery is always completely different, and they have their own terms, their own expectations. Also, you might be just working on a group show, for example, where you might just have one or two pieces in a larger collection with other artists, and it will just be like a one-off thing where you exhibit with them for, say, a month. It's not permanent, it's just a smaller show for the interim. I have a group show coming up in Paris, I think in November.
Nice.
And I just have I have one piece in that show. It's for like Paris photo week, and there's lots of other artists involved in that show. So for that instance, it's just a one-off exhibition of that artwork. And then I have another exhibition which is opening in a couple of weeks' time in London at the Koppel Project, which is just off Regent Street. I have 3 artworks in that show, and there's another 2 artists, and that's running for around a month. And again, that's just a one-off exhibition at that time. And I'm going to be installing the artworks this week, actually. So that's really exciting.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's all, and also just speak. I feel really strongly about not gatekeeping secrets, because we all. I've found when I was first starting out, no one tells you anything. You have to figure it out. So I speak to lots of other female artists who are around my age, who are navigating their art career, and we all share different stories and discuss our own experiences, which then helps each other. As there isn't a book 101 on artist life.
Yeah.
Maybe that's my TikTok, artist life 101.
Nice.
So absolutely, it's all different depending on which gallery you're working with.
Yeah, makes sense. That must be super special seeing your work hanging at the art gallery, isn't it?
Absolutely.
I can't imagine. Yeah.
I love exhibitions, especially getting to work on a solo exhibition. My last solo exhibition was in 2018, and I was thinking of one last year, but then obviously last year was not a go last year.
No.
So it's really exciting to be working on even group exhibitions at the moment, to be able to have the public engaging with artwork again in an exhibition setting, and working with other artists is super special.
Yeah, I bet. And then do you go to your own exhibition? Like you stand there and then greet the people or not? I'm just curious because I don't know anything about it.
If there's normally, under normal life, non-COVID conditions, there will normally be a private view, which isn't always the very first day of the exhibition, but will typically be, sometimes there's like a first Thursday, or it might be a Friday evening or something like that. And it will be a proper launch to the event, at which you have, maybe drinks and a meet and greet and, chat to everybody, and which is really special because then you can actually speak about your work and share the process and have some really special conversations with people. But at the moment, that's not really possible.
Right.
Hopefully, maybe by the end of the year, that type of meet and greet will be possible.
I hope so.
But other than that, no, I'm not there all the time.
No.
Like
standing there next to work.
Next to the work. Yeah.
I was curious because in the movies I always see was, with the champagne standing in the gallery. So I was imagining, but that's the opening night then.
Yeah, basically. That's the opening night. Yeah, so that definitely happens.
Nice.
That definitely happens. But yeah, that will just be a one-off. That'll be that'll be the private view, which is always really buzzy.
Nice. That also must be super fun.
Yes.
Okay. Another thing I wanted to ask is what makes a picture art and not just a picture?
That is a massive question.
Yeah, that's a difficult one.
That's a big question. As we all know, art is super subjective. And I feel, from my point of view, I feel that intention is the thing that defines whether something is art or not. Because intention holds weight and holds narrative and purpose and thought and process, and all of those things that I just listed, to me, are things that build up an art practice. So if somebody, even if I take my phone and do something intentional with it in a way that is trying to convey something that I picture as art, then I feel that is art.
Right.
I strongly feel it is to do with intention and purpose. It's not to do with the quality of an image, or if it's professional, or all of those things. I feel like all of those things aren't really not really existent when it comes to art. I think that art is subjective. Whether someone likes an artwork or not is subjective. But what makes something art, I feel, is the intention behind the making, or the placement, or the purpose, or the conversation that the object, image, space is conveying.
Okay, makes sense. Yeah,
That's, I mean, it's such a massive question.
It's a difficult question, but I'm really curious because, like, how do, like, okay, I have this bunch of pictures. Like, I don't know. How do I know if that's actually an art or it's just a picture that I do?
I mean,
you know what I mean? It's difficult to. Yeah.
If you feel that, I mean, you are a photographer, you are an artist, so your work is by proxy art. I mean, half the time, the first step is, deciding to share what you have made, and be open and vulnerable about having a conversation with that. Because I'm sure, as a creative yourself, you know that, well, to me, every single piece of work I share is a small part of myself. So it's laying that on the line and sharing an element of vulnerability. So I would just encourage you to, just share the work, and see what conversations come from that.
Right. Makes sense. Nice. And then another tricky one for you.
Oh, here we go.
How do you go about pricing your art then?
Yeah. So, I mean, pricing evolves as your career evolves.
That
So
makes sense.
I would say that if you're first starting out and you want to price something, have a think. Well, it depends on what you're pricing. Have a think in mind about the actual physical cost to yourself, like materials, your time, any kind of like delivery or shipping costs, etc., etc. All of that will just give you a basic baseline, cost.
Start. Yeah.
What has this cost me to produce? Because in any other job, you're being paid for your time.
Yeah.
So you also need to factor that in to the production of art.
Yeah.
Your time, your creativity, and then the actual physical costs. Then I would also recommend you looking at possibly other people who are in a similar stage to their career, what type of price they're charging, just as a baseline. Then, of course, once you have a value that you feel comfortable with, you can then go from there. And you have to set a price that you are comfortable with and you feel validates you and your work. I mean, I see memes all the time about artists giving their price and then clients being like, how much? I want this, but I want it for this much. And it just, that's, people don't realize what the value, well, not everybody realizes the value or the amount it takes to produce something. So I would say do your research and factor in what you feel your value is, because 9 times out of 10 that will be right. Don't sell yourself short.
No, yeah, that's right. I agree. Because I bet it's a similar way of how you do it. Like, let's say when you work with a client in commercial photography, you also do exactly the same. So same with the art, basically, when selling art, you also check how much time you invested in something like this, how much costs that portrait, and evaluating based on that. That makes sense.
Yeah. So if you were doing a commercial project or a photo shoot, you'll quote the client and you'll feel quite comfortable in like, well, this is how much it costs if you want to book this or work on this, and you just apply the same thing to your artwork.
Yeah, makes sense. Now, some a bit more technical questions, if that's
Ooh.
okay.
Yeah, of course.
Because I'm curious more about, let's say, printing the artwork, right? Because usually I deliver like digital products, and
Yes.
like even if I want to print it for myself, let's say, I'm very curious how you do that. So,
Yeah.
for example, do you have like preferred materials for printing it on?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, this is something for me that has evolved
Yeah.
over the past 4 or 5 years. And I think that with experimentation, trying out different techniques, you find what you feel suits your work
Hmm.
and what best conveys the art that you're displaying. So if I'm working on a paper print,
Yeah.
then I print those on a cotton rag fine art paper,
Uh-huh.
which has a kind of really smooth but thick. It's 310 grams, so it's really weighty, but isn't too mottily. I mean, it's all very like nuanced,
Yeah. Yeah.
but all of the things that I've kind of decided that I feel captures the ink quality
Yeah.
and the color depth to my satisfaction in
Yeah.
terms of a print.
Hmm.
Um, but the majority of so I have some works which are prints, which are a higher run number. So, say 25 to 50.
Okay.
And these will obviously be a lower price point to a
Yeah.
collector because there's more of them. So, they aren't of as great a value.
Yeah.
And
Makes
these will
sense.
be paper prints.
Yeah.
Then I do limited editions,
Yeah.
which are originals. So there'll often only be 5
Mm-hmm.
in ever printed,
That makes
and
sense. Yeah.
they are printed on aluminium, and they're called dye bond, and they have an acrylic overlay. So it's I have an image on my website, and I'll send it over to you to like include with the podcast
Yeah.
so
Nice. Yeah.
people can see. But
That's fun.
basically, it's a layer of aluminium with
Yeah.
a subframe so that it hovers off
Uh-huh.
of the wall,
Wow.
and then the photography is sandwiched between the aluminium
Yeah.
and acrylic glass.
Uh-huh.
So it well, there's several different things. To me, it has a very contemporary feel, which I
Yeah.
feel fits my art aesthetic really well. It also has great longevity in
Uh-huh.
terms of its gallery standard. It's on archival paper, and the ink has fade resistant, and the
Uh-huh.
glass has UV protection. So all of those
Right.
things add to the longevity of the artwork. And then often I will have that then tray framed in an oak frame, and
Mm-hmm.
it just looks how I always wanted it to look. So
Oh,
it's a lot
yeah.
of different practicing, and I get that done in Germany,
Uh-huh.
and then I get it shipped back to me in
Yeah.
the
Uh-huh.
UK. So
So,
that's
so you also put even a frame around it then, or
yeah,
oh wow. So you completely prepare the product for the customer
yeah,
basically.
yeah. I
Mm-hmm.
mean, it often with my prints, the prints will just go out as a print.
Yeah.
That won't be. I mean, um, I sometimes have collectors request that it is framed, and then I'll sort the framing.
Yeah.
But with often people want to frame it themselves when it's just a smaller print.
Right.
But then
Yeah.
when I'm working on larger custom pieces for collectors, they they already know exactly what they want, so I'll
Yeah.
just prepare all of that for them. And also I like to, especially when I'm working on larger pieces, the whole piece, the finish of the piece is super important to me. So
Mm-hmm.
I want to know that it's framed and done to perfection before
Right.
it goes to my client, so that I know exactly how it left the studio
Yeah.
and is going to arrive to them in the same condition.
Yeah. Yeah. Makes sense. Nice. And you want to make them as premium as possible, those limited edition ones, of course.
Yes,
And then, yeah,
absolutely.
makes sense. Wow, there's so much involved in this, isn't there?
I mean,
My brains are like working constantly.
it's always, you know,
Yeah.
with any job you learn as you
Yeah.
go, and I've experimented with. I remember when I first started out, I got an artwork printed as an acrylic,
Yeah.
um, but it was just at a, you know, it was inexpensive,
Mhm.
um, which doesn't always necessarily mean bad, but you do pay for what you get for. And I
Yeah.
didn't know it was just done at a local printers. It wasn't a specific fine art printers,
Mhm.
and it arrived, and it was horrendous. You know, it was awful. The color,
Oh
you know,
no.
the color grading was completely off. So you know
Oh
how it looks on
no.
the screen
Yeah.
didn't look how it
No.
looked in real life. Um, and you know, this was for a show, like my first show, like
Uh-huh.
5 years ago,
Oh
and
no.
I had to, you know, you learn from those
Yeah.
mistakes. So, you know, I always tell people find a reputable printers
Okay.
and get tests done. You know, you can order like strip samples,
Ah, okay.
printing samples to, you know, to see how your work is going to then look
That's a
printed.
good idea.
And
Yeah.
you know, you will then find what is going to work for you, and what doesn't, because that's one of the things with photography, is that at some point you hand that part of the process over to somebody else before
Yeah.
you then get it back. So you need to find a good printers and experiment.
Yeah, makes sense. Nice. Okay. And for the settings, let's say, when you because it's another very technical question, but
Yeah.
when you export your goods to be sent to the printer, your picture, sorry, what kind of export settings do you use? Like, do you use like SMIK, color?
So
Yes.
it depends. It depends on who I'm printing with, because
Okay.
some of the printers have printer profiles, which is set up with their system. So what I can do is I import their printer profiles into Photoshop, and then I can apply the printer profile to the artwork. So I can
Ah,
then see, roughly speaking, how it will then look
yeah.
um, printed. And sometimes that's um, you know, you know, CMYK. Sometimes it's like Adobe
Yeah.
RGB, or um, yeah, it varies.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
So,
That makes sense. Though.
and again, it's sometimes why it's really good to get, you know,
Samples. Uh-huh.
test samples done on different papers or done on different mediums, so you can see how it's going to translate
Mm-hmm.
in real life.
That makes sense. Okay,
Yeah.
awesome. Good. So these were like the technical questions. Next thing I wanted to ask, I saw you being represented by an agent,
Yes.
and I'm curious about how does that work, and like what pluses and perhaps even minuses does that have being represented by a talent agency?
So this was something that I was really excited about when I even learned that there were agencies for artists, because as I said to you before, earlier in my career, I worked with galleries,
Mhm.
and galleries are often very prescriptive in what they want to see you making. Um, and I didn't want that kind of control over
Mm.
my practice. So when I discovered about agencies, was, you know, if you have an actor, they'll have an agent
Yeah.
who, you know, is representing them, um, who, you know, handles elements of PR, who handles elements of contracts and
Mhm.
collaborations.
Mhm.
And it definitely seemed like a real niche in the market to have something like this for artists, because the art market is changing. The way that people interact with art is changing. So it seemed like a really interesting niche. So I started having a chat with Maureen, who is the CEO of MTR Agency, and we're actually discussing my artwork Hope, and those conversations led to further conversations, and we decided to work together.
Mhm.
And for me, it's just been a really special time, actually, because we started working together during lockdown last year, and all of our conversations were through Zoom calls, and even without meeting each other, I could just see like-mindedness
Mhm.
and a drive towards sharing creativity and keeping people uplifted in a really, really difficult time. And for me, working with MTR agency has just been really empowering, because it's I have a team of people at my side who are super talented and super creative, for that matter, but are also aware of my practice,
Yeah.
engaged with my practice and supportive of my practice.
Mhm.
So with them, I'm able to grow and flourish,
Mhm.
whilst having support, which is kind of like the dream
Yeah.
duo. So um, since last year, we've worked on a number of different public art projects, which I'm super passionate about, because, as I said, people haven't been able to go to exhibitions to see art. So to be able to bring art to the streets of London, and for people to be able to see artwork on their daily social distanced walks, has just been really empowering and super special. And we've got lots more coming up
Oh, that's
um,
nice.
this year. So yeah, it's just kind of a great meeting of minds and a way to navigate sharing artwork in a
Mhm.
completely different format to the gallery format. And I think it's a really powerful one.
That's great. So they help you basically with the marketing part of your business, so to say, don't they?
So elements of
In a way.
marketing, but also
Mm.
the bringing together of collaborations. So
Oh, makes sense. Yeah.
they will come up with um, different potential opportunities that speak to me as an
Mhm.
artist,
Mhm.
and from there I can build collaborations and work on different projects, um, and make some really special artwork happen.
Yeah, that's nice. What about the London? Can you tell more about the projects in London that you had? That sounds
So
exciting.
at the moment I have my artwork on the Luxton store on
Mhm.
Regent Street. So we did a public artwork with them.
Ah,
So we have, I basically, they wanted to turn the whole outside of the shop into a public artwork. So I used virtual reality app on my phone
it's like,
to kind of bring the artworks to life,
ah,
and they glow up at night. I also have an artwork which is going to be hopefully on Marble Arch, projected
mhm,
onto Marble Arch in the
uh-huh,
summer, which is really, really special. Um, it's called Metamorphosis,
uh-huh,
and hopefully it will be an amazing light show which will happen during the night.
uh-huh,
Well, from sundown until like midnight, so
uh-huh.
from sunset till around midnight. Um, so we're just waiting for like the go ahead on things like that.
Oh, that's so
um
exciting.
yeah, and there's a couple of other things, but I can't say yet in
Okay,
case
right.
it's
Ooh, now I'm curious.
yeah.
Oh, nice. That's really cool. That's really, really cool. Awesome. Okay, another question I had for you actually, because I was super curious, because I was thinking about this already for a couple of weeks, and I saw
Mm,
you just launched it. So I'm very curious to ask you is about NFTs.
yes.
So I saw you
Yes.
also launched your own NFT, didn't you? Could you tell us a little
I
bit more about that?
No, I haven't actually done one. I haven't done one
No,
yet.
I saw
No.
something about it.
No, so I'm always open
Yeah.
to, new ways of expressing ourselves. And
Yeah.
I think especially for those digital artists who that has been their core medium, for the past 20 years, and they've had no real method of selling their art
Yeah.
previously. I think it's super empowering for them to now have NFTs. Now, my artwork obviously falls between photography, digital art, and then physical work.
Yeah.
And I love having a physical artwork that has texture and materiality and all of those things.
Yeah.
However, I do use digital art within my work, and I also love incorporating elements of virtual reality into my work. So it's definitely something that I'm interested in exploring. But at the moment, there are several other areas of my practice which I just kind of feel more strongly about that I'm kind of working on. So it's definitely something that's, I'm not saying never say never, it's definitely something that I'm looking into and researching. And I think it's just the tip of the iceberg in how work is, it's obviously the buzzword at the moment. And whilst I think it's special and interesting, I think it has a long way to go, and I think that it will evolve a lot over the next year, 5 years, 10 years. So I'm interested to see where it evolves, and open to the possibility of making
NFT
work in that direction.
Interesting. Yeah, I started also researching. It's something completely new, but it looks very interesting. So I'm very curious. I was very curious if you, like, I thought you actually did one artwork
No,
or something
I
there.
haven't. I
I
haven't
don't know
done
what
one.
I've
I
saw.
haven't done one yet, but I am thinking
You're
about it.
thinking about it, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, me too. I'm very
Yeah.
curious to learn a bit more. So I'm hoping to find a person who can tell me more about it as well.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's very interesting. Nice. Okay, cool. Because that's an interesting topic, I think, to also
Yeah.
touch upon
Definitely.
and learn about. Okay. Another thing I wanted to ask is about your creative processes, because obviously you're an artist and you have these amazing pieces, like the one with a little pill in between the lips and the whole
Yeah.
world inside it and things
Yeah.
like that. And I was just wondering, how do you find your inspiration? How do you even, come up with such beautiful ideas?
I mean, my brain is a very interesting space. And I often get just visions in my head, and whilst it sounds cliche, it genuinely is how it's like. I speak to my fiance, and he's very talented musically, and he'll be able to just hear something in his head that he wants to play and can then just play it. So for me, I am very kind of emotional and visual. So an artwork being emotive is very important to me, plus how it would then kind of feel physically. So in my mind, if I can like visualize a color or a feeling or an emotion or an image, that's how an artwork plants a seed in my head. And a lot of that inspiration comes from a variety of different places, from books, films, music, um, nature, especially. And it's one of the reasons I live in the countryside, because I'm constantly inspired by my natural surroundings, and also just human experiences, my life experiences. So my process very much starts from those points.
Oh, nice. Awesome. And now I wanted to ask you is couple of closing questions
Yeah.
because I already took a lot of your time.
Oh, it's
Um,
fine.
nice. Like it seems like you're having a lot of fun at your work. What do you love most about your work? What is most fun for you?
I honestly love being able to do what I love,
Mhm.
and there are so many. It's quite complex because when your passion becomes your job, that does complicate things because it can no longer just be purely what you love because it's also your income. But what
Yeah.
keeps me like I'm obsessed with my work and I'm definitely a workaholic. So I just love being able to wake up and eat, breathe, and sleep my craft and my practice. And it means I constantly get to, meet new people, talk to people like you, talk to new people, be inspired by what others are doing, and communicate kind of globally with so many different people is amazing. It's something I never thought that I would be able to share my work with so many people and to affect so many people and inspire different people. So I just feel so grateful all the time that I'm able to communicate in the way that I am able to communicate. And it's such a privilege to be able to do the thing that I've always loved as my full-time job.
Yeah, that's amazing, isn't it? Yeah, makes sense. Do you have some influencers or books or anything that can, people find for inspiration when creating their work?
I see. I things that I mean, I have a couple of artists who just, on Instagram who I love, but often the things that I listen to and read aren't always necessarily directly art related. So there's a podcast called At Home With,
Okay.
and it's by Lily Pebbles and Anna Newton,
Uh-huh.
and they do this. They're both close friends anyway, and they do this series where they talk to successful women, and they talk to them. I mean, this was pre-COVID that they started doing this, but they talk to them in their homes,
Uh-huh.
and so they kind of get to see a little bit of, because I think a home says a lot about you. It's your space,
Yeah.
so they get to learn how these women's careers developed, how they developed as women themselves, and also then a little bit of interior design, which I
Oh, that's
absolutely love.
nice. Yeah.
So yeah, that's a fantastic podcast.
Mhm.
On Instagram, I love following Heather Day. She's a contemporary painter um, who's based in California, and she's building a studio in the desert at the moment, and it just looks amazing. I want to go visit it
Yeah.
when it's finished. And then there's another artist called Dan Lamb who makes these amazing drippy sculptures. I imagine if you saw them, you'd probably recognize her work.
Uh-huh.
But they're amazing. And then books, I really love fiction books.
Uh-huh.
That I mean, I have a whole plethora of art books that I've read on, color theory and things like that. But the
Yeah.
books that actually really inspire me are like Pillars of the Earth
Mhm.
by Ken Follett, which, because I'm a massive history nerd buff, so it was all about the building of a cathedral.
Okay.
Um, so, but but set fictionally, but with real historical characters evolving around that, and then kind of fantasy books as well, which is
Like?
my bag. But yeah, so nothing. I mean, I think sometimes when you take yourself outside of the thing that you're doing, that's when I find the most inspiration. So, just going for a walk,
Mhm.
or listening to some classical music or something like that really kind of allows my brain to stop thinking to be able to think, if that makes sense.
Yeah, nice. Which fantasy books? Now I'm curious.
Oh no, like all of the trashy stuff that they talk about on Book
okay.
Talk, definitely, like A Court of Thorn and Roses.
I just bought that book.
Yes, you're gonna love it.
Yeah?
It's trashy and obsessive.
Okay,
absolutely.
nice. I'm curious.
Yeah, it's like young. It's young adult, but not young adult. It's like steamy young adult.
Okay. I'm very curious. Nice.
Yeah, I mean, you're absolutely going to love it. Yeah, I'm on the newest one. I think it's the 5th book at the minute, and yeah, it's completely, when you just want to, it doesn't have to be, not every book that you read has to be like super highbrow. Like,
no, for me, books are too, like, I read books when I lay in the sun or lay in a bath. For me, books are
absolutely.
like relaxing. So I want the books to be fun and getting you into, and fantasy indeed for me.
Yes,
fantasy is the
absolutely.
thing. Yeah.
Absolutely.
Sorry, I got us off the track.
No, it's good. It's good.
I was very curious because I love this. I love fantasy books. Okay. Yeah. What exciting projects are you working on right now? I heard something about hope.
So yeah, I mean, I've got a couple of more public art things that are coming soon in London. So I'll be sharing them probably in the next couple of weeks on my Instagram, which is great. I'm also working on a big project with a well-known company where I'm creating an artwork, a big artwork, which I'm really excited about. Which
that's a secretive project.
Again, I can probably share more in like July, July time. And then I'm also just working on like a new collection of artwork, which I can't wait to kind of really get my teeth into. I love making a new body of work. And also I'm creating some filters. So I've got my Hope filter. I don't know if you've tried it out on Instagram, like the face filters.
Okay.
So yeah, my Hope filter, so you can have the plasters with the flowers come up on your face.
Sick, smart.
But I'm working on creating a couple of others for some of my other artworks. Everyone voted for Head in the Clouds to become a filter. So I'm mid-process on that because it's more challenging than I anticipated. But yeah, I can't wait to release that as well. Nice. So yeah.
So there's a lot of exciting projects happening.
Yes, there's stuff coming and I can share it soon.
Nice.
On my Instagram. But yeah, I mean, yeah. So this thing's coming, awesome. And my work's going to be the work in the Luxton store on Regent Street is now becoming an actual indoor exhibition. So I'm taking over the whole top floor of the store, and you'll be able to go and view the work and sit and have a drink and look through the artwork and stuff.
Experience.
So, yes, exactly. Sick. I'm in the middle of making the playlist for the store. So yeah, that's going to be really exciting. So if anybody is in London during April and May, then
okay, tricky.
I mean, we can all travel so much at the moment. I don't know what the problem is.
No. Oh, that's nice. I'd love to see that actually. Yeah. If I'm ever in London, I'm gonna reach out and then I'm gonna ask you very exactly I can see your work because I want to see it.
Yes, please do. Please do.
Fun. Awesome. So speaking of, because where can the listeners find you? So what's your Instagram or TikTok?
So my Instagram is Claire Luxton Art. My TikTok, let me triple check. I want to check my own username.
Yeah. My
TikTok is Claire Luxton, just Claire Luxton. My website is www.claireluxtonart.com, and then my YouTube is Claire Luxton Art as well, I believe. Basically, if you just type me in, I'll probably come up.
In Google. Nice.
Yeah.
Great. So, as a final note, what would be your, as a final advice, like quick advice for um, for someone starting as an artist?
I would say definitely have a social media presence that's purely professional, and share, and don't overthink it. Don't try and edit it now. You can find out what works and do that at a later date. Don't critique yourself before you've actually shared it, because you'll think, I'm going to share this. No, that's not good. No one will like it, and then never share it. But then you don't know because you've never shared it. So just, set up, all the social, and have a really good social media presence, and have a dedicated email address and contact details so people can actually reach out to you and talk to you about your work, because you never know who's looking, who's watching. And yeah, don't compare yourself too much.
Yep. Great one.
Yeah.
Beautiful. All right. Thank you, Claire, very much. This was super interesting. Yeah, thank you
Thank you
for
for
joining.
having me.
Thanks.